So I guess I have a little series going now. The Was X Good at Romance series. Don't expect too much more, I only have one more installment planned for this currently. But anyway, we're heading on to the story that is probably the biggest catalyst for my entire channel, Attack on Titan. And there's going to be a good influx of AOT content because there's a lot to talk about in this show that I haven't yet talked about. Now, I think this video is going to be the most controversial among the Was X Good at Romance ones because I think most people would agree with Avatar being good at romance and definitely most would agree on JJK being bad at romance. But AOT is a little more split, I think. I still probably hold the popular opinion, but by less this time than the others. I of course think the answer to the question is yes, if you couldn't tell by the thumbnail. And I think the 4 romances I did put on the thumbnail are all good. Now I know there's plenty of opposition to some of these pairs, trust me, I know. I used to live in the AOT fandom a couple years back. Some quote-unquote fans really hate stuff in this show. But to me, these pairs and character dynamics overall in the show did an unbelievable job in reinforcing the show's messages and were so well executed. Admittedly, romance in AOT is the best executed part of the story. I will concede that some aspects were rushed and not as fleshed out as they should have been, and I will definitely go over that more in the video. But overall, the romances did an excellent job in what they're supposed to do, and were just, in my opinion, good to amazing. Oh, also if I sound different, it's either because A, I'm kinda sick, or B, I have a new mic now. I kinda broke my old mic, don't ask how, but yeah. So let's start off with a little refresher on what romances should do in these non-romance stories. They should ground the story. Something like Attack on Titan is unbelievably chaotic. Like I said, Jujutsu Kaisen was really chaotic in my last video, and don't get me wrong, it is. But Attack on Titan, man, it's even more chaotic despite not being as fast paced. And that's because the entire premise of the story gets flipped multiple times throughout the show. We think the Titans are just mindless zombies basically at first. Nope, people can turn into Titans and turn back. We think the Titans don't really have actual plans and kinda just do whatever. Nope, they're led by a giant monkey Titan that can talk. Oh, and that giant monkey Titan is also a human. And the armored and colossal Titans that blew up Shiganshina, they're actually 2 people we followed from the very beginning as scouts. Oh yeah, and that monkey Titan is actually the half-brother of the main character, because the walls are actually not the last bastions of humanity. There's a whole world out there, and their dad was part of it before being banished to the island, all because the Eldian people can turn into Titans, and they had an evil king who took advantage of that. Oh, and also there's the first Titan, a little girl who was abused and exploited all her life, and got abused and exploited by the king. And now our main character is the villain that made his dad kill people with time travel memory things and wants to wipe out the whole world. Yeah, explaining the sequence of events in this show to someone who's never seen it would be a pretty interesting task. The overall point being so much shit happens in this show, there is a desperate need for an anchor. Without something holding it down, it'll move too freely and end up getting lost in the sea, just like our main character did. And I'd say this is accomplished. Romances traditionally would ground stories with relatability. Love is such a universal experience, and falling in love is something everyone can relate to or really want. AOTs I think fit the bill in terms of the falling in love part, but make no mistake, these romances are very untraditional. They more so act as an anchor to the other element, likability and rootability. Attack on Titan is pretty good at everything, and one of its biggest strengths is its cast of characters. You would be hard pressed to find a straight up bad character. The characters you may dislike are often made to be disliked. Other than that, I'd say the main cast is basically perfect. I know there's some disagreement there, but like even the biggest AOT haters would admit the characters are pretty damn good. And obviously for a romance of 2 characters to work, the 2 characters have to be pretty likable to get us to root for them and get that good payoff. But this is Attack on Titan. We don't get that much happy payoff when our heroes win. A lot of the romances here amplify the tragedy and make you depressed. It's here to make you feel down and really feel how heavy this entire thing is. I mean, in the very first battle, we get reminded very quickly.
He won't respond to CPR! Come on, baby! You got this! Stay with me! Somebody help us!
We don't even know these 2 very much at all, but we knew they were in love, and seeing that scene is very obviously very heartbreaking. It shows us how brutal this world is, but how love can still persist and will always be there. This tiny little scene with these relatively unknown characters was expertly well done, so let's see how good the romances were with the main characters. Let's start with the most popular and most significant romance of the story, as well as my personal favorite, Eren and Mikasa. Now if you're a very long time viewer of this channel, first I really appreciate you, you're amazing. But you would know that I made an Eren Mika video way back, like it's been a year and a half, Jesus, time flies. I think that video has aged decently well and my opinion has not changed. I still love Eren Mika. It's amazing, one of my favorite romances ever. I know a lot of people do not like it and I'll address that, but Eren Mika to me perfectly served the story and were a pair of amazing characters with an amazing dynamic. I'm not gonna go as in depth as I have before, because well, that's what that video was for, but I'll go over the important parts. Both Eren and Mikasa as characters were amazing. Eren, I don't think there's that much to debate. People love Eren, think he's one of the best main characters of all time, and I'd have to agree. Funnily enough, I also have an Eren video, which also aged pretty well I think. The TLDR, Eren is an absolutely tragic character. We see him in the beginning as a naive, angry kid with big dreams caged in by giant walls, and we see him in the end as a naive, angry kid with big dreams caged by giant walls, this time being his own mind. He unfortunately could not change. Everyone around him was able to give up their dreams. Armin sacrificed himself, Jean gave up his spot in the inner walls, Mikasa would give up on her dream with Eren, but Eren could not give up his dream of freedom. His innate desire he was born with to be free. That's what led him to do everything he ended up doing, from becoming a scout to killing 80% of the world's population. Mikasa is my personal favorite character in this story. Pretty controversial, I know, and I have planned a video on her for the longest time, but I just haven't gotten around to doing it. It's coming soon, not the next video, but probably the one after, because I have a lot to owe Mikasa. I used to argue about her for hours on Reddit all the time back in the day. That was a big part in sparking the creation for this very channel. So wait, maybe actually that's a pretty bad thing. Anyway, Mikasa was great in this show. Her journey was much more subtle than Eren, which of course Eren is the main character, but even for a side character it's subtle and for some, too subtle. I'll admit, it may be a little too subtle, but it works. Her journey is sort of the inverse of Eren's. Eren had big picture dreams from the very start, and until the very end where he had regrets and his dreams shifted to a smaller scale, such as being with Mikasa notably and being with his friends. Mikasa in the beginning focused on her dreams to be with Eren, to be with her home. Over time, her duties went beyond that and had to eventually give it up to completely save the world. And this diversion of paths as well as their innate connection are among the foundations for this romance. That, along with its symbolism of the quote that this entire story revolves around so much, I've said it enough in my days talking about this show, so let Mikasa take over.
This world is cruel, but it's also beautiful.
That quote is what this whole dynamic is built on. In this overtly brutal world that Attack on Titan takes place in, through all the horrors these two dealt with, Mikasa watched her family brutally die in front of her, Eren watched his home get bulldozed and his mom eaten by a Titan, and then both became child soldiers fighting monsters. Watching more people get mauled and killed, as brutal, as violent, as terrible of a life as you could possibly imagine. Yet they found the beauty in this cruel world with each other. Mikasa obviously loved Eren throughout the show dearly, and her dream was always to just be with him. Eren also loved Mikasa, however, he was a gigantic idiot. With this obsession for freedom, his brash and reckless behavior, he was a big dum-dum, and because of that, he never really realized his feelings because he was so busy being a maniac. That's the tragedy of these two. They wanted to be together so badly. The cabin dream was proof of that. If Mikasa confessed, Eren would have willingly dropped everything he was planning to live out his final few years with her. This was his dream as much as it was hers, but that's all it was, a dream. Because the circumstances of the world they lived in and terrible decisions made, it is so these two could never live the life they should have, mainly falling on Eren. He couldn't fully realize the beauty Mikasa brought to his world. That's the tragedy of Attack on Titan. Throughout the story, we see so many good people's lives get destroyed because of the world they live in and the bad decisions made. Eren and Mikasa, to me, embody the entire story the best. They embody the tragedy that is the identity of the story, the complex twists and turns that are so iconic, yet Eren and Mikasa as a pair themselves are remarkably simple. They love each other because they were always there for each other. And all those brutal moments they had to endure, one of the few constants was that they had each other. That they were each other's beauty in this ever so cruel world, and that made us root for them. We wanted them to get their happy ending, to be able to be together in peace. But they couldn't, and us rooting for them made the tragedy of everything hit so much harder. It grounded the story in giving us an amazing pair to root for and reinforce what the story is trying to say. To me, that's an A++ of a romance. Now of course, I know some people really do not like Eren and Mikasa, and I admit, I do think there could have been a little bit more in terms of moments for these two. Not that much more, but you know, a scene here and there. However, to me, the moments that did occur were pretty amazing. Of course, the most famous ones in Scream, where Eren barehanded throws hands with the Titan to save Mikasa. I think that whole sequence is really romantic and one of my favorite moments from this show. Mikasa uplifting Eren, showing him how much he means to her and all that he's done, and he responded to that in a very Eren way. In fact, there's supposed to be a kiss scene here, but honestly, if they're gonna do that, they should have done that in like a scene after they get back. I think that would have been kind of cute, but I like how the scene turned out in reality. Other than that, earlier on when Mikasa sees Eren alive and cries hugging him while listening to his heartbeat, when Eren defends her in that court thing, they're recovering together and Eren really softening up. And of course, the scarf, symbolizing their love better than anything else ever could. When Mikasa put it back on in the end, it represented how she accepted Eren for all he is, still loving him to death, but realizing she has to do what she has to do. All of these were great, and I wish there were just a little more of these. Some people really don't think these two are good because of the lack of the moments, and because early Eren is an annoying dipshit. But the most common reason people don't like this pair is not because of the pair itself, but it's because a lot of people do not like Mikasa, and if you do not like a character in a romance, you most likely won't be a fan of that romance. If you don't like Mikasa, man, I really don't think I can change her mind too much. Yeah, she has less emotion. Yeah, she says Eren a lot, but she's much more than that. Her journey is one of the most impactful of the whole story, but it is pretty subtle. With how chaotic the story is and how many other good characters there are, she can get kind of lost in all that sauce. I wish there was a little more spotlight on her, but she's a great character, man. Mikasa video coming soon, I promise. And people like Eren, I don't have to get into that anymore, and I already have before. Also, these two are not incest, I'm not delving into that. Eren and Historia are the worst pair of all time, Jean and Mikasa are meh, and anything else is too far into what if land. Now on to my second favorite pair in this story, Ymir and Historia. They served a very similar role to Eren and Mikasa, but over a shorter term. Eren and Mikasa were obviously focused throughout the entire story, they're among the main characters. Ymir and Historia on the other hand really had a half a season of relevance, but that half a season was amazing. This part of the story was a prelude to the significance of Historia. Before all this, we thought her name was still Krista. Remember that? I sometimes don't. Simpler times when her name was Krista. No Reiner betrayal, no Marley, no Zeke, none of all that crazy shit. Ymir was also someone with a sort of mystique. She was another scout, but you could clearly tell something was a little off. Then she turns into a Titan, and we're like, holy fuck. And then we learn her backstory and say, holy fuck again. Someone forced into being a cult leader from childhood, abused and exploited, and turned into a Titan for decades? These two's relationship all lie on the foundation of living your own life, living for yourself. Ymir was robbed of that. When she heard about Historia, she wanted to make sure she wouldn't live the same fate as herself. Historia, when she was still Krista, was incredibly timid. She kinda just sat back and followed the crowd rather than taking initiative for herself. And Ymir really didn't like that because that's how she was and that's how you end up getting exploited. Ymir's push against this is a big factor to how Historia would end up in the end, as the Queen of Paradise, though they kind of abandoned her character later on, but that's a separate problem. Back to the point, Historia and Ymir were another pair that represented the story so well, of this cycle that happens over and over of people suffering. Historia could have been just another Ymir easily, used as a puppet and exploited, and ultimately not having a life of her own. However, she went on another path and lived her own life, in no small part because of what Ymir taught her. In the same vein, while Ymir's life didn't last much longer after she met Historia, those few moments she had with her were the highlights of her own life. Historia is someone she wished she was more like, and if their circumstances weren't what they were, she would have 100% stayed with her and enjoyed the rest of her life with her. She only left because she felt as if there's no hope on the island and that she might as well give back what she took from Marcel. But make no mistake, she wanted to stay. She fell in love with Historia if that wasn't painfully obvious. That love letter she wrote to Historia was one of my favorite moments of the show. It just added to the tragedy this whole story is, that Ymir couldn't live the life she wanted, and that she's carrying on her dream with Historia. I know some people think Historia didn't like her back, but like come on guys, to me it's pretty obvious this is a mutual romantic love. I honestly wouldn't change a thing about their dynamic or execution. It was perfect setup for the later events of the story, and gave us an amazing pair to root for in their limited moments, grounding the story, increasing investment, and amplifying the tragedy. I couldn't ask for anything more. Now the other two pairs in this thumbnail are Armin and Annie, and Gabby and Falco. Both of these pairs fall under the satisfying conclusion pair, since these two happen at the very end of the story. As I said, Attack on Titan is a tragic story. The two pairs I've mentioned before are a testament to that. However, there are hopeful messages. The world is beautiful as well after all. Armin is a character that represents hope the most. Someone who dreamed of the outside world, of all the marvels it would have and all the things there are to experience. He was who humanity needed, and he's ultimately the one who did quote unquote save the world. Which makes Annie a very interesting pairing for him. Annie was the complete opposite. She was the most hopeless out of anyone in this story, which you really couldn't blame her after learning about her backstory. Terrible childhood, having to go through that Marley Warrior program, only having her father, deploying and immediately watching one of her friends die, then having to do that whole thing on Paradise undercover. In fact, she joined the military police rather than sticking with her comrades. She wanted as much stability and peace as possible. But still, of course, she had her mission, she went through with it. A lot of people dislike Annie because of her actions during the female Titan arc, which I understand, but basically every prominent character killed a lot of people. Armin and the rest of the scouts participated and contributed to the Liberal raid. No one has their hands clean in this story, and to single out Annie from the rest is very unfair. Armin would probably be the first to say that. If he was able to get a good ending, she should too. Having Annie, someone who is so hopeless and depressed, get with Armin, someone who always has hope despite the bleakest of times, I think is a great idea. They also had pretty good natural chemistry in their conversations. They're both adorably awkward when they talk to each other. I know some people think that Armin only likes Annie because of burnt toast memories, but that's just not true. Everything Eren said at that table is just straight bullshit. There is no Ackerman bond thing, and Armin isn't being brainwashed by someone else's memories. Now, why would Armin like Annie then? Well, Armin always admired her, and it's pretty reasonable to assume as he learned more about Marley and all that, he grew more empathetic to Annie. And also, while the memories didn't brainwash him, he did learn and see more of Annie, so it's reasonable to infer that he fell for her there. Why would Annie like Armin? Well, again, he's someone who's stubbornly hopeful and understanding. Someone Annie would probably wish she was more like. And Annie could hear everything while she was frozen in carbonite. She probably grew fond of whatever Armin would talk about. Now, compared to the other two pairs, this does rank a lot lower because half the pair was just not in the show for half the show. But its main role was to be a satisfying conclusion, and I was satisfied at the conclusion, so I think it did its job. Less so in terms of scale and impact, but it still gave us something to root for in that chaotic end. Similar idea with Gabi and Falco. I know some people may be a little upset that these two are here, but they're the only other canon pair left, so yeah. And I like these two, I think they're really cute together. A lot of the hate is towards Gabi for, well, obvious reasons, but I like Gabi's character. Yes, she did kill Sasha and that was devastating, I'm not gonna downplay that at all. I love Sasha too, guys. However, I really liked the direction they had with her character. She was so obviously meant to be like early Eren, a brash and dumb kid forced in terrible conditions that has a very single-minded view on the world. This does not mean Gabi and Eren were exactly the same, it just means they have some foundational similarities. But the big difference between Gabi and Eren is that she learned that she was wrong way earlier than Eren, and she could actually change. Through being on Paradise, she realized that not everyone here is a devil, they're just people. Which is what Eren realized when he went to Marley. However, Eren didn't change because he couldn't. That is what his tragedy was. But Gabi did change. She no longer held a single-minded view. She worked with people from Paradise to stop the rumbling. Falco in this comparison is the Mikasa, the more level-headed one who has to keep the other out of trouble. And Falco repeatedly risks his life over and over for Gabi and does confess. A classic we're all gonna die so I'm gonna confess. And I like that. And I like Falco. I liked him and Gabi together. Of course, this isn't as fleshed out as some of the other pairs because it just wasn't a focus. All they had to be was be cute together, and they were cute together. I really liked how they got their happy ending. The analogy with the Force is a big one. It's what Sasha's dad used to defend Gabi despite her killing his daughter. Sasha couldn't get out of it, but Gabi did. And in the scene in the last epilogue thing, her and Falco are planting a tree, a symbol of rebirth and hope, as well as them reinventing the forest, making it not a death trap, but a thriving and peaceful ecosystem. Gabi and Falco are also in a way the parallel to Eren and Mikasa. Mikasa was crying on a tree where Eren is buried and the tree that had so much significance for them. Gabi and Falco are together planting a new tree, showing the potential to move forward. I think all of that is amazing. The pair did their job exactly, grounded the story, and reinforced the story's messages. Before I end off, I will briefly comment on the more ambiguous pairs, I guess. Levi and Hanji I think could be pretty good. I almost put them in a thumbnail. They have a great dynamic and I love when they're together. However, I don't think it's necessary to make them romantic. As is, they're pretty amazing as this close platonic pair. Making it a romance, while potentially good, I don't think would have made their dynamic or the story better. But that scene in the woods where they're talking about running away was really fucking adorable. Another pair with Levi is Levi and Irvin, which in ship language is Eri? I have no idea how to say that, and I don't know why it's that, but I don't really like these two. I just can't personally see Irvin with anyone. He doesn't seem like the one for romance. Let's see, is there other significant pairs? Reiner x Burrito? Don't see the reason for that. Decent idea though, I guess. Marco x Jean? I actually like that one. However, Marco is, dead, and he died early on, so having that happen throughout the story obviously wouldn't work. But having Jean like him and have his death be even more tragic, I like that. Oh, Sasha and Niccolo, can't believe I almost forgot about them. They're actually pretty canon, they're great. I mean, come on, Sasha getting with the chef, what more could you want? Obviously these two didn't have too many moments because, you know, bang, but having Niccolo be in love with Sasha made this so much more tragic and hit even harder. I really wish we saw more cute moments, but this pair did their job for the story amazingly. The rest of the pairs are too ambiguous for me to comment on, as they kinda just go away from the reality of the story to do its own thing in fanfiction land, which I have nothing against, but it's pretty different from what I'm talking about. So yeah, Attack on Titan was great at romance. The biggest thing it did well was make this already tragic story even more tragic. I know it may seem simple, like, oh sure, yeah, the lover died, but I think the story did an amazing job of making us care about the characters, which made the romances better and made the tragedy even more tragic. It's easier said than done, man. Ask Jujutsu Kaisen. Attack on Titan is just simply a tier above in every aspect you can look for.